Hi all. In this video we will take a detailed look at some of the significant new features and improvements to Revit 2026. As in previous releases, the primary new structural features are around reinforcement. However, Autodesk continue to build out their steel detailing capabilities, and in this release we have the option to disable the shortening of steel elements, or what was known as springback. The platform features in this release are also very significant. The biggest update for me now is the fix to topo solids. Previously, the topo solid accuracy was impacted by the limited number of points that the topo solid could contain. The accuracy of topo solids is critical for those that want to import and utilise civil 3D tin surfaces. This limit can now be set in the Revit INI file, and it now defaults to 20,000 points. The overall performance of Revit when dealing with larger models is also helped with the accelerated graphics feature, which can give up to 4 to 5 times more performance when navigating models. It's important to note that this is not just for 3D views, but also works in plane sections and elevations. And of course, like previous releases of Revit, we have quite a few new user interface improvements. Okay, let's get going and start to have a look at the Rebar updates and improvements. Let's start by looking at Rebar cranks. We'll begin by investigating the system family file that controls the Rebar cranking. Looking into the project browser here, what I'm going to do is filter this now just to have a look at the families. And looking down through the families here, we can see that we have structural rebar. Expanding that, of course, now we have Rebar crank. And if I expand this out, you can see that this is a system family, and of course we can actually configure new types of the system family for different cranking arrangements. If I go ahead and edit one of these that I've already got, in this case we'll go and view the type properties. In the type properties dialog, you can clearly see here that this is a system family, and of course it is a Rebar crank. And in this type, you can see here I've set my crank slope to 1 to 12. I've got an offset multiplier of 2, so of course that's going to make sure that the bars accurately lap. And here I have a length multiplier set to 40. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click OK to the type properties dialog. And now what we'll do is we'll switch back to the views in the project browser here. And we'll begin by opening up a 3D view where we can add a crank to some rebars. Let's zoom into the interface here, and of course we can see that we have a column at the bottom and a column at the top. And how this is working is I have starter bars coming up from the column below, and then of course I have the main reinforcement bars of the column self-intersecting with those starter bars here. And of course the ultimate solution here is to provide a rebar crank in this situation. This is done by adding the crank to either the start or the end of the rebar. And here this leads us on to another feature inside Revit. For example, if I select this rebar set here, we can now see that we have an arrow at the top which is designating the start of the bar, and I actually have another arrow at the bottom showing me the end of the bar. So this is very useful to understand what end we need to apply the crank. So in this case here, I need to apply the crank to the end of the rebars. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and select all of the rebars that I want to actually apply the crank to. And looking into the instance properties, we can see here that the end of the bar is currently set to none. So of course here I could put additional end treatment on the bar, but in this case I'm going to utilise a crank. Again, looking at the instance properties, you can see here we can choose our crank type. So here we're going to use our 40. And then zooming into the model below, we can now see that crank applied. Now you may find when you actually apply your crank in here, it goes the wrong way. So what we've got here is the ability to of course rotate the end. So if I set this to 0, you can now see the crank is going in the opposite direction. So in this case, of course, we want to set this to 180. And there's our rebar crank. Another useful thing to show here is the ability to edit the rebar constraints on the crank, so we can actually control where the crank starts and where it ends. To look at this, we're going to go ahead and open up a section. And if we zoom into the section here, we can see the column that we've just provided the crank for. Just so we can see this a bit better, I'm just going to hide the rebar so we can see the crank in a better view. Okay, and we can now clearly see this crank over here. Looking up onto the Context tab, you'll notice here we've got our usual Edit Constraints tool. What's really nice about this now is you can see that we can constrain the start of the crank position in here and the end of the crank position here. So in this example here, you can see that I've got negative 275 from this face of the column here. So let's say that I wanted to increase that to minus 300. Of course, I can just type that in, and we can now see that crank has adjusted. Again, down the bottom here, I can select this one, and perhaps I want to set this to 0. So here we've got the crank starting exactly on the end of the bar coming up here, and then you can see that we're cranking along, and we've got the knuckle just where we want it for the link that's going to support those cranks. So that's a very useful function. What we'd also do here is look at another type of cranking on a column transition. So we'll open up another view over here. And in this example, we can see that we've got a much larger column section on the bottom here, and then we're coming up and interfacing with a smaller column just above the floor slab here. Of course, again, the ultimate solution here would be to provide rebar cranks so that we can drop down the prefabricated cage of the smaller column on top. So again here, you can see that we have that same cranking solution with these rebars. In this example though, what we've done is we've utilised Edit Bars. So up on the Context tab, we can select Edit Bars, and of course here we can rotate and control each individual bar in the rebar set to get the required position and cranks that we want to successfully interface and lap with the column above. And one last thing to note with the rebar cranking is we can accurately adjust each dimension on the crank. So if I select the rebar crank here, in the Properties palette, I'll select Edit Type. You'll notice in the Type Properties of our system family, we can now also edit the crank lengths. Selecting this, you'll notice in here that the majority of these are provided with an auto calculation, but I've also got a type here that I've removed the auto calculation on, and when we do this, we can go ahead and very accurately control the individual slope, the angle length, the straight length, and the crank offset. So again, that can be very useful in certain situations. Okay, let's move on to the next feature, which is looking at an improvement to varying rebar. So I'm going to begin here by opening up a structural plan, and we'll see here that we have a situation where we have varying rebar in the same element. You'll see here that the rebar on the left hand side here is identical to the rebar on the right. The only difference is it's been mirrored. Now let's go ahead and look at the bending schedule that's been created from this. So in the project browser, we'll go ahead and switch to the schedules filter, and we'll open up the rebar bending schedule. Looking into the bending schedule here, you'll see that we've got a single bar for each element. Now of course that's not strictly true because we know that we've got two bars that are the same for the left hand side and the right hand side. So we can now control this. So let's go ahead and select the Structure tab, and in the Reinforcement panel we'll go to the drop down and we'll go to Reinforcement Settings. Selecting the varying rebar set, you'll now notice that the numbering method has an additional option here where we can match sets with identical bars. So doing this and selecting OK, you'll now see the rebar bending schedule roll up, and of course now we can see that we've got two bars in the slab where they're duplicates. Of course we can now go back and adjust the bar mark, so we'll go to our reinforcement numbers, and of course in here I now want to actually start this perhaps at bar mark 1. So we'd apply that, and now you can see that we've got a more precise and accurate bending schedule. Next we'll take a look at some specific steel details. Let's go into the project browser and we'll switch back to all of our views in here. And I'm going to begin here by opening up a 3D view. Looking at the top of our model, you can see that we have quite a bit of steel work here. And this is typically how Revit would work with steel. You can see that when we've drawn steel members in here, each steel element is then cut back automatically to its counterpart. A new feature now is the ability to remove all of these cutbacks. Now this is either done before or after you start modelling. And to have a look at this setting, we would go to the Structure tab and we go into the Structural Settings. In the Structural Settings dialog, you'll now note that we have Structural Steel Elements tab right at the end. Very simply here, we can tick Disable the Shortening, and we get a nice information dialog here telling us that this is going to now impact all of the steel elements within our current project. So we'll click OK here and then click OK again, and we'll now see that all of those shortenings or springbacks have now been removed. So of course now looking into the truss here, we can see again here all of those elements are now intersecting with the centre line. So what's the advantage of this? Well, when we look at downstream steel fabrication processes that we might want to do in advanced steel or other detailing packages, it's much nicer not to have all of these automatic cutbacks. Now of course, if we want to reinstate the cutbacks, that's nice and easy. We can just go back into the structural settings, go back to the structural steel elements tab, and then again enable those cutbacks. So, it doesn't matter if you've done that by mistake, you could just always go back to the original. Finally, in this video, we'll have a look at saved positions on sheets. In the project browser, let's go ahead and set our filter for sheets, and we'll open up this sheet here. We can see that we've got our title block, we've already got a legend placed on the sheet, and now what we want to do is go ahead and place one of those plan views onto the sheet. So we'll go back and actually use our view filter in here, and we can see here we've got our level 0 structural plan. We'll drag that across onto the sheet and we'll position this where we want. We'll place the view title, and then what I'm going to do is select this view on the sheet, and we can see here that we have saved positions and the view anchor. In this example, what I'd like to do is save the position on the sheet. So here I'll call this one plan. Of course now I want to create another sheet and place the level 1 plan on that sheet, and ideally I want that in the same position. So I'll go back and filter to the sheets again. This time I'm going to go to my third floor. Again we'll go back to the views, and now I want to actually go ahead and place the level 1 structural plan. Now of course previously, to get this into the right position, I'd have needed to use guide grids, but now what I can do is select the viewport. I can go to saved position and then recall the plan position, and you can now see we've got exactly the same view positioning. So how does that actually work? Well, if I go ahead and click edit position in here, you can see that we have a view anchor that we can set. This is how we can control the origin and positioning of the view. Of course, I could pick new view anchors in here depending on what I want as my positioning origin. In this case, I do want the view origin to be the anchor. Now when I'm editing the view, I can actually move it and replace it. So if I move the view down to here, and I now accept that change, you can now see that Revit flags up that I've got two views placed on sheets, and this is going to update all those view positions. Of course, if I go ahead and select OK, and now switch back to my previous sheet, you can see that this view has updated as well. So of course that is an enormous time saver. Another new feature we have here is if I select the viewport and I look into the instance properties, here I can now see that I have a new group here called view to sheet positioning, and of course here I can also set my saved position. But you'll also see here that we've got view position X and Y. And if I actually remove this view position in here, I can then accurately control these coordinates. So here I've just typed in my own coordinate there, and of course what I can then do is place another view and use that exact same coordinate. So let's have a go at that. So I'll go back into my sheets. This time I'll go ahead and open up view number 4 or sheet number 4. We'll go back and again filter our sheets here, and I'll go and place out perhaps level 4 here. We'll drop that down on the view, and we can see in here, of course now I can directly type in those coordinates, and that view again is positioned. So that's a very welcome change and a really good new platform feature. So hopefully in future videos I'll go through some of the other new features in Revit 2026, but these are the main structural features and some of the favourite platform features. Okay, see you soon.